do think he understands that Netanyahu will never be satisfied until Iran is reduced to a Libya or a Syria.
No, and I think Trump, frankly, is complicit with it. You know, he went.
So, guys, welcome back to the channel. Right off the bat, if you guys could please hit the like and subscribe button, that would be greatly appreciated, because we are definitely going full into our geopolitics in this channel. But enough about this channel. So let's get right into it. Judge Napolitano, he is an American patriot. You know, I'm trying not to show all of my biases, but I just like a person who speaks about the inconvenient truth, and that's what he does on his show. Okay, he's not just going to tell you, oh, we're doing everything right because we're America. He's saying I have concerns with America, and he brings on people to talk about what we've been doing and what's been going on. Now, if you guys don't know, Larry Johnson is a former CIA intel analyst, another one who I learned a lot from, especially when we decided to go into Ukraine, proxy Ukraine into a war with Russia. I was like, okay, I need to figure out who I'm listening to and who's going to give me the news that makes sense. And Larry Johnson is one that I learned a lot from. And of course, Scott Ritter, I mean, you know, again, voices that keep it real. Some people have been punished for keeping it real. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this clip of Larry Johnson and Scott Ritter talking to Judge Napolitano about, you know, the plans for Iran and where America and Israel stand together in the plans for Iran. Without further ado, let's get into the clip.
He knew that this attack on the 13th was going to take place, which is why, you know, when it looked like it had succeeded in decapitating the Iranian regime, he was out all smiles. I knew everything. I knew the exact time. Yeah, I knew it all. He was very insistent on that. But when it turned out it didn't decapitate and deactivate the Iranian government, when the Iranian government started retaliating and its missiles were shredding Israeli air defense, remember, Trump then did a turnabout. He became Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. He knew nothing. I didn't know anything about this. This is all a mystery to me. And the fact that he allowed it to go on 2 days before they were supposed to meet, U.S. and Iran was supposed to meet again and negotiating the agreement that Scott was describing. So, you know, this is not about the nukes, I maintain. This is about regime change. Because if the concern was about an Islamic country having a nuke, well, you ever heard of Pakistan? And in fact, when it comes to terrorist attacks out of Pakistan compared to Iran, Iran is not the number one sponsor of terrorism in the world. You can make a case that Pakistan is. Gee, who were they hosting up in a one city in Pakistan? Oh, that would be Osama bin Laden. And this recent terrorist attack into Kashmir, where did that group come from? Pakistan. So terrorism, Islamic country with a nuke, that's not what this is all about. This is about taking out Iran. And Israel conveniently forgets that from 1980 through 1986, Israel was selling weapons to Iran to help Iran fight against Iraq. You know, there's a little bit of history that people like to ignore.
Scotty, what do you think Netanyahu is going to try?
And right before we get into Scott Ritter's analysis, that's the thing that I feel like a lot of people, look, again, I think I've said this already on this channel, but I'll say it again. I don't believe in this notion of hero countries or anything like that. I do believe that people do what they need to do at the time they need to do it for what's best for them and possibly their country, right? I'm a person who's former, you know, was very much into certain political aisles, and you know, like I said before, like I was like extremely with MAGA and everything, and you know, and I definitely believe in making America great again. But I also understand, and what unfortunately a lot of people in MAGA is now coming to terms with is the fact that Trump is not what they thought he would be. Okay, and so it's, you know, with the Epstein files and everything else, which ties into a lot of this what we're talking about here. A lot of people are starting to see like, yo, you know what? this isn't what I signed up for. I knew the second term would be like this because I was blessed to be around people who were helping me see what the second term would look like. But that's a different story. But it is important to know that, again, these type of things that are happening, that happened with Iran, when people say, well, we don't want to be involved or whatever, Larry Johnson just broke it down. Not only are we involved, we're assisting, Trump knew what was going to happen. There's nothing anti-war right now about our administration, and that's just a fact.
Try and get from Trump next week.
Well, first of all, you have to understand that every time Netanyahu visits the United States, there's a domestic political agenda for him to wrap himself, to be cloaked in the flag of America, which implies the support of America. Netanyahu postures himself inside Israel as the only person capable of guaranteeing American support. I mean, to be able to say, hey, because of me, I got 7 B-2 bombers to fly over Iran and drop bunker busters on their facilities. That's a big win for Netanyahu. So he wants to maintain the image of the closeness between himself and Trump. I also think that Netanyahu is, we don't know what damage Iran did, but speculation informs speculation, and I happen to agree with it. Iran did a lot of damage to Israel, and that Israel is scared. And so I think Netanyahu is going to be looking for strategies to manage this. How do you continue to maintain pressure on Iran without having to cross the line of departure again? Because, I mean, it's an amazing statement that came out today from the IRGC. I don't know if you saw it. He said that none of the missile cities that Iran had built, where they store the best of the best missiles they have, he said none of those were activated. We used our old missiles, our old stores. We didn't use any of the new good stuff. He said so.
Let me just stop you for a second, Chris. Can you put up Larry's map showing all the places in Iraq? Now look at that.
Yeah, I mean,
and now you're telling us that damage was done using the old stuff, Scott.
Using the old stuff, and against a fully functional ballistic missile defense system. I mean, people can talk about all they want about the exhaustion of missiles, et cetera. Israel never exhausted their missiles. Had this war go on, they would have. But my point in saying this is that it wasn't that the missile defense system broke down through a lack of available interceptors. It was that the Iranian missiles overwhelmed the system, and later on, as they fired the more advanced versions, and remember, the most advanced versions they fired appeared to be old Shahab 3 liquid-fueled missiles with modern separating warheads. I think the Imad and the Ghadr H are 2 with cluster warheads.
What does that mean for those of us unschooled in the technical understanding of missiles?
I'm going to let him explain the missiles, and then I'm going to show you a video of one of the Iranian missiles, because, look, hey, okay, I'm Judge Nap in this too, right? But I started to learn, I was like, okay, I need to know what we're talking about here and, what we're getting into here.
Well, if we're talking about a hypersonic missile, you're looking at a missile that's going to not only take off at high speed. See, a ballistic missile does a ballistic trajectory. A hypersonic missile is capable of high speed flight, so it's going to deviate off course. It's going to maneuver. Generally speaking, you can do that with liquid fuel, but the best one to use it is with solid fuel. And the Iranians have solid fuel missiles that do this. But a ballistic missile that goes on a ballistic trajectory and then has a separating warhead. So the warhead separates, the booster falls off. Actually, the booster keeps flying and absorbs interceptor hits. All those interceptor hits you see blown up in the sky, those are separated boosters being hit because the radars can't differentiate between the small target and the big target. Nobody talks about that. But the warhead comes in, and now the warhead can maneuver. It's got various sensors in it that are looking for their targets. The warhead itself, as it maneuvers, also has its own capability to maneuver and then hyper accelerate down. So it has a propulsion package on the back of it. But a warhead can also separate and then split into submunitions. If you remember, the Oreshnik missile that Russia fired against Ukraine was a missile that came in, separated the booster, came in, opened up, and it had 6 warheads, each one of which had 6 submunitions. So you saw 6 separate strikes with 6 submunitions hitting down each one. Iran has the same thing. I think the Ihad or the Imad missile is that kind. The Goddard has the same things. Cluster munitions. They also deploy decoys. So you'll see the warhead come in. What's interesting is it separates and slows down. So there's a braking mechanism that pops open, slows it down. It deploys decoys, and then the decoys go out, and you see all the interceptors go out for the decoys because the decoys are superheated, et cetera, and they're moving on the trajectory that was predicted. Now, warhead pops the fins, holds up, decoys go forward, absorb, and then you see the warhead go in, bam. This is the old stuff. We're talking, these are warheads that are like 6-10 years old. The good stuff is still in the missile, the hypersonic missiles, the maneuvering, the extraordinarily accurate systems. Iran hasn't used them. They may have used one or two. There's talk about they came in with a Fatah just to prove a point, Fatah being the hypersonic, but I think it was the Fatah 1, not the Fatah 2. So Iran hasn't even used its good stuff yet.
And that is something to talk about. Look, and I like the way they explain it. They don't make it seem like, oh, yeah, Iran broke the whole defense system of Israel and it no longer exists. He's saying, like, no. It exists and it works. It was just overwhelmed. And this was a good breakdown of how these missiles, they break off into different warheads and everything else. Because it's good to understand these things. And now, during this 12-day war, I was, blessed to get a lot of news. I was on that 12-day space. And everything that was going on, so that I started to learn about these missiles, and it was a particular one that they did deploy, and I think it was one time, just to show. And he says it was the Fatah 1. I'm talking about the Qadam Shar. This is an animation of the Qadam Shar missile, and I'm just going to play it for you.
And pseudo-random trajectory. It is Iran's first exo-atmospheric maneuverable re-entry vehicle, capable of changing its course in the vacuum of space. For this purpose, the re-entry vehicle is equipped with a liquid propellant thruster system for attitude control, enabling it to perform continuous and pseudo-random trajectory changes. This forces the ballistic missile defense interceptor and its kill vehicle to deplete their fuel reserves, which were designed for targets that cannot significantly alter their trajectory outside of the atmosphere. Once the exo-atmospheric MAR-V completes its evasive maneuvers, it is put on a precise ballistic trajectory to hit its intended target unguided. The thruster attitude control system puts the re-entry vehicle into a steep dive angle.
I have to stop it because of the music, but I mean, it's fascinating. I think that anybody who likes somebody will be like, whoa, what do you love war? Like, no, it's not that. I love the science. I still don't understand all of, the chemicals and everything that goes into doing this, but this is a hypersonic re-entry missile, that went all the way outside the atmosphere of the Earth, then maneuvered itself to come back down to its target.
And it's put into a spin, traveling the atmospheric re-entry phase unguided, but at a very high velocity. Its impact velocity of over Mach 8 means that most endo-atmospheric ballistic missile interceptors with hit-to-kill warheads lack the necessary reaction time to compensate for motion fluctuations encountered during re-entry. Thus, it can defeat such systems by operating at a velocity too high for their designed engagement regime. The steep re-entry angle, high speed, and resulting low travel time through the atmosphere ensure that the Qadam Shar 4 retains point strike capability, even with an unguided re-entry vehicle. The circular error probable, CEP, of this missile is estimated at 30 meters, while the warhead weighs 1.5 tons, giving it a high destructive capability against hardpoint objects. It also has the option for late submunition release inside the atmosphere to reduce dispersion, suitable for larger soft targets.
Absolutely interesting. I want to see, excuse me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys at the next one. Bye.